The Bible is the most printed book in the history of the world. The first Bible, the Gutenberg Bible, was printed in 1455. And in front of me, I have Bibles printed in each of the past 6 centuries. And if you stick around to the end, you will see the most beautiful Bible ever printed. I will show you a Bible printed in pure gold, and I'll even show you a Bible that said the opposite of what it was supposed to say, that you should kill people. The Gutenberg Bible is the first book printed in the Western world. The year, approximately 1455. And there were only about 180 copies printed, and today only 49 copies have survived. You want to know how much a copy would cost today? At least $50 million if there were one for sale, but there hasn't been one surface in over 40 years. Now, this is a replica of the Gutenberg Bible in front of me. I'm going to open it up and show you what it looks like. And you'll see everything in black is the printing press, but everything in color has been hand illuminated. It's kind of that transition between the illuminated manuscripts of previous centuries to the printing press, which sped up the ability to make more than one Bible at a time. It took a scribe an average of 1 day to do one column, or approximately 3 to 4 years to do the entire Bible. If you go back to the 3rd and 4th centuries, well, basically all the way back to the time of Christ, the Bible was handwritten, written on parchment, animal skin, and I have a sample right here that is from the 13th century, printed in Paris about the year 1250. It's all handwritten, and like I said, it would have taken a very trained scribe approximately 1 day to do one column. Now that is on animal skin, is one reason why it has lasted so long. Most beautiful Bibles still, I believe, are the handwritten illuminated Bibles like this one right here. This is actually an extremely well done replica, but you will never see a Bible printed in modern times that could rival. This is actually one done for a person of nobility in Italy in the 1400s. But you look, it doesn't matter where you go. This replica is actually extremely valuable and would cost more than a lot of these Bibles because of the just the sheer nature of doing it and the gold that is used on this. But this is the most beautiful Bible in the world. I've never seen a more beautiful Bible than this. You just go through, no matter what page you go to, it is absolutely stunning. Even though the printing press made it easier to print the Bible, this beauty of doing it by hand can never be replicated. So the Gutenberg Bible came off the press 1455. And then other Bibles were printed, and this Bible that I'm about to show you was also printed in Germany, but in Nuremberg in 1479. That's just a couple decades after the Gutenberg. But if you look at this, it follows a similar format. You'll see that the print is in black, but everything in color is done by hand. If we go to the very beginning, we can see a little more illumination. But the more illumination, the more costly it was. And even this Bible for the common person was very expensive. This was still a book for somebody who was wealthy. But by the end of the 1400s, about 1495, they began to print a Bible they called the Poor Man's Bible, right here, which is also a Bible in Latin, but that's the entire Bible. Following the same format with some minor illumination by hand, but that is known as the Poor Man's Bible right there. So when the Gutenberg Bible was printed, it was in Latin. It wasn't in German, even though it had the Gutenberg. It was printed in Germany, but it was in Latin, and the Bible had only been in Latin for over 1,000 years. Now, that was not the language of the common person. That was the language of nobility, of clerics, and wealthy people. People had a great curiosity. They wanted to know what was in the Bible, and so a man named John Wycliffe did really the first complete translation of the Bible into English. And there were maybe a couple of hundred of those that were made, and those are extremely rare. Last copy I saw was $2 million, and I was able to hold that in my hands. But now let's move forward to the 1500s. People want the Bible in their own language, and so at great risk, they did that. A man named Martin Luther translated the Bible into German. William Tyndale was the first person to translate the Bible in English and have it printed at the printing press. But that didn't go well because there was a lot of resistance, and in 1536 he is strangled and burned at the stake. In fact, William Tyndale's last words before he was put to death was, "Lord God, please open the eyes of the King of England." And 3 years after his martyrdom, there was a Bible that came out known as the Great Bible under Henry VIII. Now that's the first authorized English language version of the Bible. His daughter Mary comes into power, and she's not too keen on that, so she made it very difficult for the Protestants to stay in Great Britain, and so they fled to Geneva, Switzerland. And they wanted their own Bible in English, and it's there that a Bible known as the Breeches Bible or Geneva Bible was printed. This is an example of that. Now this was meant to be the first study Bible. There's about 1 million words in the Bible, and so you have text here, but you also have 300,000 words of commentary in the margin. This is the first version of the Bible brought to the Americas by the Pilgrims. So the Geneva version of the Bible was very, very popular. In fact, that's the version used by Shakespeare, and it was a favorite, but it was eventually discontinued in 1644. The 1611 King James Bible is the most printed book in the history of the world. More than any other book, more than any other Bible, it's the King James Bible, and it does not disappoint. On the inside, it is absolutely beautiful. Look at that. It's made to look like it's handwritten, but it's in what they call black letter font. It's this kind of script. For the next 250 years, no other Bible in English challenges this. All Protestants were using the King James Bible. By the time you get to the 1700s, all the way to the early 1800s, this was the Bible. And it's really the most influential book on the English language too. I think most people would be surprised to know that these early versions of the Bible had the Apocrypha in them, including the King James Bible. Look at that. You finish the Old Testament, and then here you go. They even have this whole new break and a new title page right there, the Apocrypha. By the time we get to the 1700s, bookbinders have reached their peak at making these just beautiful Bibles. And they went all out to do these beautiful illustrated Bibles like this. This is from 1716. And John Baskett, it was the printer on this. But unfortunately, all these many centuries later, this book is known for one error. If we stay in the book of Luke and we go to Luke 20, where it talks about parable of the vineyard, there was a typo. And it now says parable of the vinegar. This is now known as the Vinegar Bible. You can have 1 million words right, but one mistake, and that's what they remember you for, and that's what they remember this beautiful Bible for. One mistake, this is known as the Vinegar Bible. Well, this wasn't the only Bible that had an error that is remembered all these years later. Here is a Bible from 1795, and if we open this book up to the book of Mark 7:27, this is what it's supposed to say. But Jesus said unto her, Let the children first be filled, for it is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to the dogs. Although this copy, whoever was setting the type, messed up on one letter. Now it says, But Jesus said unto her, Let the children first be killed, for it is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to the dogs. This Bible, printed in 1795, is now known as the Child Killer Bible. As we transition to the 1800s, that's when they begin to make these family Bibles. The family Bibles typically came in two versions, illustrated, non-illustrated. It actually doubled the cost to have it illustrated. I have an example of one back here on the shelf. It's actually a 2-volume set. I'll just pull off one of them. This was done in 1791. It's really the 1791. It's one of the early Bibles printed in America, just a couple decades after the Declaration of Independence. But this one is illustrated, so whoever owned this one paid double the amount to get 50 illustrations in it. And let's just open it up to one of them right here. You can see these were interspersed throughout, but that is an illustrated family Bible from the late 1700s. And now as we go to the 1800s, probably if you've seen old Bibles, this is the one you've seen, one like this. It's very ornate, but these were mass produced with a big machine. And they were made with very inexpensive paper, and so they literally fall apart. This actually happens to be one that's in very good shape. I get calls all the time. People say, I have a Bible worth $100,000. It's from the 1800s. And it's like, is it Abraham Lincoln's? Well, it would have to be something like that to be worth more than, let's say, a few $100s or $1,000. But this is your most typical Bible printed in the 1800s. It typically cost a day's wage to print one of these, $1 to $2. Now, also in the 1800s, they went out of their ways to be different from and give you something unique. And now we are getting to a Bible printed in gold. It is printed in gold, and it's also it's the most dense Bible I have ever seen. It weighs more than a Bible 3 times its size. And here it is. In fact, this weighs twice as much as that one. I can barely hold it. This is like holding lead. But as I open it up, no matter where I open it, you'll see it's in gold on enameled porcelain paper. Only about 10 of these have survived. You could literally melt this down for the gold. But that is a crazy book. That's one of the most unusual Bibles I have ever seen. And finally, for Bibles from the 1800s, to give you something unique. First of all, this is a very beautiful Bible, but they wanted to give you a surprise when you open this Bible. You've heard of Fore-Edge paintings. Well, this Bible turns, I'll let you see what happens. It turns blue on both sides, and then it goes away. But that is just a very interesting Bible. It's in very good shape, but those are just 3 very unique Bibles printed in the 1800s. You see all of these large Bibles right here. Well, look at this. Here are Bibles, miniature Bibles, also replicating each of these. Now you say, why would they possibly do that? Well, one way, they wanted the ability to have the Bible or scriptures with them at all times, and so they made these small ones that you could literally put in your pocket. Also, I read the preface of one of these that said, "It is a sorrowful reflection in a country such as ours, where all may have the Bible, that so few seldom read this best of books. Let's hope the perusal of this small Bible will so attract the young mind that you will develop a love for the scriptures." So they wanted you to get used to it and get young people excited about that. And you say, how can you possibly read a Bible that small? Well, you couldn't, unless you had a magnifying glass, which typically these little Bibles had magnifying glasses. It's more of a novelty. They gave these to children who promptly lost them, so these miniature Bibles are more scarce than most of these larger Bibles. Now, we've covered 6 centuries. Well, and you say, well, what about modern? Well, you've got your phone. There's the most recent. You can get 100 versions of the Bible right there on your phone. But if we go back to the 1400s, and the Gutenberg Bible, okay, there's not one for sale, but if one did come on the market, 50 million, possibly up to 100 million. Bibles from the 1800s are usually a few $100s up to $1,000 or $2,000, depending on how ornate. A first edition King James Bible can range from $75,000 if it has issues, up to $250,000 or more. A Tyndale Bible, an early Geneva Bible, these prices range all over the place. But needless to say, there are hundreds of thousands of dollars of Bibles just on this table. Do you know that if I went back in time, like back to the time of William Tyndale, and I showed them I had the Bible on this, I realistically would have been burned at the stake along with William Tyndale for witchcraft, having the scriptures on a little thing that lights up. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Well, I think that's about a wrap for this video. And I'd appreciate your comments. Tell me what you think, and I'm looking forward to doing future videos. Tell me in the comments what you want me to cover. Do you want me to do more videos on the Bible? Or do you want me to go to the opposite? Do you want me to talk about witchcraft, demonology, occult philosophy? Or what about pop cultures, Star Wars? What about Lord of the Rings? What about Jane Austen? There are so many topics I could cover. I'm looking forward to do it. I just need to know in which order to tackle those. So tell me in the comments. Thanks for joining me on this video at Moon's Rare Books. My name is Reid Moon, and it's at Moon's Rare Books where we bring history to life.